I left that day unexpectedly. So what I share with my clients is you can either build a bridge from leaving from one organization to leaping into entrepreneurship, or from leaving an organization to going to a different organization, or you can go into the free fall.
Hi guys, today I'm going to introduce you guys to Karen Davids. She's been in Steve Chandler's program for about 7 years. She's worked with Rich Living and Steve Chandler and got coached by them one-on-one and went through so many different types of coaching program. Her career background was in startup, and she helped grow multiple startup companies, and one of the startup company almost went into IPO. I'll let her tell you the story. And this is why she now focuses on coaching entrepreneurs and actually also other coaches. If you are an entrepreneur, I highly encourage you to watch her interview. Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for joining me. So I met Karen through the ACS program. She is a very successful coach. She coaches entrepreneurs and executives, and also she also has an accelerator program that coaches many successful coaches as well. So I thought I really have to interview her and also learn from her about how she's making a difference in this world with her work. So welcome, Karen. And
thank you, Kelly.
So I really want, would you tell us a little bit about yourself to the audience?
Sure. So I came from the corporate world. I had spent 18 years. I worked for 2 organizations, and those organizations went from small entrepreneurial ventures. So one was a software company and one was an advertising agency, all focused in on technology. And then from that entrepreneurial organization of maybe I was the 13th employee in one business and 25th employee in the other, I became part of their leadership team. And we went through acquisition and then to merger to be publicly held companies. So I was 10 years with the software company and 8 years with the advertising agency. And the advertising agency was acquired by Ogilvy. And on the day of the acquisition, I knew that there was something that was bigger out there for me. In fact, every time when I would get in my car to drive into the office, I would be checking in, like, what else is out there? Like, how can I make a bigger impact in the world? And it wasn't like I was miserable in what I was doing. I was actually very challenged by what I was doing. It was really fun, and it was fun to lead, and it was fun to watch the organizations grow. However, I had inside of me something that was just pulling me into something bigger. And so I left the organization quite unexpectedly the day of the acquisition. And it was because we couldn't agree on a non-compete. They wanted a 7-year non-compete. And because I had this pull inside of me, I knew that I couldn't sign a 7-year non-compete, that there was something else that was out there for me, and I just wasn't certain what it was. And then March of 2006, I found meditation, and I had really started to slow down. So that was about 3 months before I left the whole corporate world. And that really helped me get in touch with the whole inner world, and really get clear that there was something bigger out there for me. And so I left that day unexpectedly. So what I share with my clients is you can either build a bridge from leaving from one organization to leaping into entrepreneurship, or from leaving an organization to going to a different organization, or you can go into the free fall. And so what I was doing was going into the free fall. I was just trusting that there would be something else that would show up for me. I've worked since I was 10 years old. My dad had a family-owned business. And so I literally, Kelly, I sat here at my desk, this desk right here where you see me. And I was like, what have I just done? What's going on? And And about a week later, the phone rang. And it was a consultant that had worked for the advertising agency for us back in 2004 and actually helped position us for that acquisition. And she just said, hey, I hear that you're no longer at that organization. I could really use someone like you on a contract basis. Are you interested? And I said yes. And because I knew it was going to be that means to an end, I was going to find what it was that I was seeking and what I was looking for. And so fast forward, this is the story of how I became a coach.
Yeah.
I doing some work for the Emergency Food and Family Assistance Program in Boulder, Colorado, where I live. And one of the board members asked me if I had ever coached before. And I said what I say and what I was saying in doing consulting, which is no. However, I can figure it out. I will figure that out. And I would love an introduction. And so a week later, she introduced me to the CEO of another board that she sat on. And they hired me, and I went in and I started coaching all their high potentials inside that organization. And then another organization heard what I was doing. And so I started coaching in another organization, loving the work. And I was so inspired by the work that in 2008, which was the downturn,
Yes.
I founded a company with a business partner called Engage, where we were doing employee engagement workshops. That there was such a crisis during that time. So many people were being laid off, and so many people inside the corporate workplace were disenchanted. And so we were working with companies like Cisco, HP, we worked with their middle management, Pfizer, and they really needed to hear at that point in time that there was hope and that there was a new way that was possible, even though we were having difficult times. And so I had that business and the coaching business until March of 2012. And I'd been thinking, I went back to coach training school in 2011. And when the first day that I walked in, and I trained under Julia Leila on ontological coaching, I sat in the back of the room and I went, oh my God, this is it. This is definitely what I want to be doing. Yeah. And so in March of 2012, then my business partner and I dissolved Engage. I put 100% of my energies into coaching, and this is it. This is what I was looking for. I've never looked back. I have loved every moment, every client, every situation that I've been in, every failure, it's just been such a dream come true for me. It's the home stretch. If you think about, the baseball analogy, it's absolutely my home stretch game here.
That's great. It's so good to hear because I feel like you weren't just when I'm listening to your journey, it was you were doing good. Like I hear a lot of the coaches before, like a lot of them have something really traumatic happen to them, and then it's like I had cancer or something really awful that happened and they turned their life around and then they became an excellent coach. But it's like I feel like I can almost relate to you more because there are a lot of people like you that are out there that doing good work in their company, but it's like every time your body feels a little bit of different, like this is maybe not right for me, this is good but not right, and you just went for the next challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
And not only did I go for it, but I truly felt pulled. I felt like a spiritual pull into what I'm doing. And I'm so in alignment. I'm so on my path that everything unfolds, that I can simply trust that the people that I'm meant to work with, they show up in my world. And I know it might sound a little woo-woo, but it's I just watch it. I smile and I surrender to it.
Yeah.
And so there's something to be said, and I see this in my clients as well, that when you are in complete alignment with the purpose, with the reason that you're here, that things become much easier, and it's right there. I was just in conversation with a woman yesterday, and she said, "Man, I have to be careful with the intentions that I set because they start happening, and if I'm not ready for them,
Yeah.
they come too quickly." Yeah.
Yeah. Our mind is very powerful, right?
It is.
And I know you coach a lot of.
Our heart. So is our heart. Our heart
Yes.
is very powerful. Our
Yeah.
intuition. Yeah.
Yes. So I know you coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're like really growing their business. And what do you think, like, one of the biggest obstacle that they always face?
Well, I think there's a couple. One of the biggest obstacles that they face is really having that person outside the organization that has a new perspective for them. So having that person that can normalize what they're going through, having that person, and because I coach so many other entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy for me to be able to go, okay, let me share a story with you. Let me share a story of another entrepreneur and what that entrepreneur faced and what occurred for them. Let me share another story with you, because I become like the central clearinghouse for what works, what doesn't work, what other entrepreneurs have gone through. When they're trying to sell their companies, what's the difference between having a private equity firm acquire you versus a VC that's involved, right? And how do they respond differently to what occurs inside the organization? So I'm constantly learning what works, what doesn't work. So that's one thing for sure, is to have that outside perspective of someone who can begin to ask the questions that really evoke that inner wisdom within, but also that can help normalize what it is that they're going through and give them some inner peace and inner calm that, hey, it's going to be okay. So that's one. The other big thing with entrepreneurs is oftentimes they're the big visionary, right? They're the ones that came up with the idea for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always, 15 or 20 steps ahead of the team. And so really teaching them leadership, communication skills, how to lead by agreement versus expectation, all these different skills that they really need to slow down to begin to understand. So I would say those are the two biggest with my entrepreneur clients.
That's good. That's really good. What about, I was gonna also ask you about the difference, because you mentioned about going for a VC for funding would be different, or going at, the different scenarios. What do you think the difference would be for somebody who's growing just trying to raise fund for 1 to 2 million versus somebody who is trying to raise fund for like the next level, maybe 100 million or something like that? So with price difference that you're raising fund, like what are the different questions they should consider, you think?
As they're raising more money, Kelly, I don't have that specific experience.
Okay.
I'm thinking about a client. Most of my entrepreneurs are not out raising that kind of fund. It's usually smaller funds.
Okay.
So the entrepreneurs that I'm working with, the businesses are typically, 25 to maybe 100, 150 people, employees,
Okay.
and anywhere from 2 million to 10, 15 million. And then the other group are the executives that are inside corporations. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I do apprenticeships with coaches as well.
Okay.
I don't have a good answer for you on that one. Yeah,
Okay.
on that difference.
Okay. So maybe that I just kind of do a number there. So is there a difference with the price range, you think, though, even within
Oh,
what you're working with?
yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay. So can you talk about that a bit?
In terms of what? In terms of,
Like, what are the questions that I have to consider? Like, if I'm just raising for 1 to 2 million.
well, I mean, one of the big questions is, right, how much equity are they willing to give up, and how much control over their company are they willing to give up?
Mm-hmm.
And are they willing to step up as a leader? Because if they don't, then oftentimes the board of directors and the VCs, which typically there is a VC on the board, will, and I have seen this, will replace them as the founder leaders. They're still founders, but they'll bring in someone who has specific expertise on how to grow companies and how to lead teams. However, what's most important are the questions, the coaching, and evoking that inner wisdom within that entrepreneur. They know so much more about their business, about their people, than I do. And so oftentimes I will hold back when it is, I feel like it's more of a consultative approach versus coaching, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I know that there's as the company grows, then the confidence level of the entrepreneur or the leader has to also grow.
Yes.
So how do you help them with that?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So what I typically see, Kelly, is that, and I see this with my executives, and I see this with my coaches, it's pretty pervasive, is that they appear very confident on the outside, but they're dying on the inside. And so in order to be able to help them with their confidence, it's a matter of them being willing, right? Willing to tell on themselves, willing to say what's going on inside of here. And it typically is the cheddar that's going on. So I have this executive that I've coached with for years, and her habit, and it is a habit, used to be to second guess all of her decisions. And she was a general manager of a division in a $29 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
And I do virtually unlimited coaching, which means that my clients have spot coaching sessions of 10 minutes or less. And invariably, she would call me on her drive home, and it would be, it was obvious what was going on. And she was second guessing herself, beating herself up, hearing, what other people might be thinking or saying inside of her head. And so that's the confident on the outside. And she was, I mean, she looked like, wow, is she this incredible executive, right? And that's how she ended up getting promoted. As I'd worked with her, it was a phenomenal story. However, there was this inside demon that was on attack all the time. And so the more open she could be, the more vulnerable, the more willing to tell on herself. I loved that she reached out when that was occurring, because little by little, we were putting that to rest. And it takes time, and it takes a willingness on behalf of your client to be open to the growth. We don't stop growing at 16. We don't stop growing at 21. And we don't stop growing at 60.
Yeah.
It just keeps happening. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say is openness and willingness to be able to tell in yourself, be coachable, reach out for help, and just know that this happens for everyone and that it's going to be okay. And over time, your confidence will be built.
Okay. Yeah. So as they grow, right? So then they're gonna have a bigger team that they have to coach, like you mentioned earlier, that they have to learn to communicate their vision.
Yes.
I always think that over communication it's a good thing almost. But what are some of the tips that you have for your clients for communicating and coaching their team?
You know, one entrepreneur that I'm working with right now, I just met with her team yesterday morning, and there's a fabulous book out there by Michael Bungay Stanier. It's called The Coaching Habit. And the book is for inside organizations to teach managers, directors, leaders how to coach their teams. There's 7 key questions that you ask your people that Michael Bungay Stanier spells out. I'd be happy to send that to you, Kelly, if you want to share that with your audience.
Sure.
I have a PDF of it. Michael shares it.
Okay.
And I think that is one of the absolute best approaches to working with teams and getting them in alignment and having them aligned with the values of the organization. One of my executives, the company was paying me to coach him to become a better manager for his team. And when we met with his executive sponsor inside the organization, and after I'd gone through this book with him, chapter by chapter by chapter, and he started experimenting with some of the tips inside this book, he was getting stellar 360 feedback from his team.
Oh, wow.
And his manager, my executive sponsor, was so thrilled with that work. And so that's one of my go-to books inside organizations, whether it's an entrepreneur or an executive.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all the questions I have. Is there a question that I should have asked that I didn't ask?
Well, the only question that I can think of that I would love to answer is around that purpose, that greater purpose that I felt, that pull that I referred to early on in our conversation. And so I have it in one sentence, and that is to bring more love, care, kindness, and humanity into the workplace. And I believe that's so needed. I believe it's so important that the people, we spend how many hours a day in the workplace, 50, 60, sometimes 70 hours a week of our precious life. And that it's so important for us as leaders, for us as human beings, to be kind, loving, respectful of other people, and leave the gossip, leave the judgment behind, and that productivity and the wealth of the organization will grow, and not just the wealth in terms of dollar value, but in terms of heart strength and health of the organization, health of the employees. And so that's my mission. That's my big mission. Is it doesn't have to be difficult where we spend most of our time inside the workplace. We can be coming home and bringing that life into our families, into our politics, into our humanity for the planet. So that's the question that I would love to answer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.